Obrigado a todos, bom dia. Um grande prazer estar aqui. Em respeito a Keri, a gente vai começar a palestra em inglês e falar que no final, as duas primeiras pessoas que fizerem perguntas ganharão 2 gifts aí, com muito carinho para vocês. Então, caprichem aí na atenção para fazer perguntas e ganhar. So, let's change to English. I'm Nelson, and here we have Keri, the MIT Executive Director. Our research is based on board members, all right? So if you are a board member, this is a great start point just to know more how to deal with the cybersecurity challenge. On the other hand, if you are a CISO, a security manager, or if you work with security, this is a great research that you can use to be prepared if you are asked to go to the other executive board meeting. So in this way, we can see that every single day, we are seeing new companies that have been hacked. We know that your data was leaked. If you see the last research that we did at MIT regarding the data breach, we got more than 26 billion records. We have your records. We see that, and we have the certainty that we just have 2 kinds of companies. What?
Well, we know there are the companies that have been attacked and the companies that don't yet know they've been attacked.
So, in this way, the only certainty that we have also too is that technology was never sufficient to protect our companies. When we see the problems that we have today, almost the most problem that we have is a human problem. And as you see, the criminals are improving the techniques every day because the control was made to be broken. So how can we deal with this problem? And here, let's see how comes cybersecurity MIT Sloan can help us with this challenge. So Keri.
Would you like to advance the slides? So today, well, first of all, bom dia. Thank you, obrigado, for including me today. I represent the Cybersecurity at MIT Sloan Research Consortium, and we are a group that looks at the managerial, organizational, and strategic questions in cybersecurity. We're at MIT, so everything we do includes technology, but our group really focuses on leadership, people like you that have to make your organization secure. And we do research in this area, and we share our findings in our papers and in executive programs and in presentations like this. And we're funded by companies like yours. Nelson, next slide, please. So you can see on this slide a number of companies that support our research. And so if our research is of interest to you and you're interested in getting involved in CAMS, please reach out. I'd be happy to meet you afterwards and tell you more about what we do. But you can see a number of companies, many of whom are displaying here, that participate with us at MIT. Next slide. So our organization has looked at a number of research questions about organizational issues and cybersecurity leadership. But the one that Nelson and I want to talk to you about today is about the role of the board of directors. There's lots of interesting research on individuals. How do we build a culture of cybersecurity? How do we look at the question, how secure are we? How do we report metrics? But today we're going to talk about the role of the board. And in the next slide, you can see that in our research, we looked at the issue that board members have fiduciary responsibility and oversight responsibility for their corporations. And of course, cybersecurity is one of the biggest risks that organizations face. So our board members have to be knowledgeable participants in cybersecurity so that they can help us as cyber professionals to make sure that we are meeting the organization's needs for cybersecurity. And we wrote about this in a paper. You can see the picture on the slide. In a few minutes, we'll give you the QR code if you'd like to download that paper. But we published a paper in the Harvard Business Review earlier this year on the 7 pressing questions that board members should ask you so that they understand how cybersecurity is being managed in our companies. And we're going to share those questions with you today. Nelson?
Yes, and so to do this research, we did a lot of surveys, And we got to the point that the board may not understand their role regarding the cybersecurity challenger. It's here that they think that cybersecurity is not only responsible for data protection. When we are talking about security, security is a strategy, can be a competitive advantage. We are talking about reputation, image, so things that the critical business function, for example, operations, a lot of things that's not just about data. They need to be careful about how we can map the critical points to protect our company. So here, we can see that, as I told you, control was made to be broken. We needed to establish a lot of security in depth. One control is going to be break. We need to have another one. How can we support? And the only certainty that we have is that we are going to be hacked, as we had Google, Facebook, NSA, Uber, a lot of big companies that was hacked. And about you, why not you? So this is the way that we always need to have secondary controls and security in depth. And the problem here, cybersecurity problem is not your problem. It's the organization problem. This is a human problem. It's not a technical point. Never the technology was sufficient to protect the companies against the cyber threats. So in this way, we needed to guarantee that the whole company is accomplished to protect the organization and the customer's data. And here, if you are a member of a board, probably you are not a specialist in that specific domain. So how you deal with that? For example, me, I'm not a finance specialist. I am going to request the best finance analyst to support me to answer my questions and help me to address the business strategy. So it's really important that you, as a CISO or security director, how can you support the board as you are requested? And if you are a board member, what is the best security talent that you can have in your board chair to help you to challenge the cybersecurity problem? And the other point here, board must focus on risk, reputation, image, and business continuity. That's the way that security is not just about data. This is about a complete company strategy. And to see that, we can ask ourselves how the board can learn more and know or have the structure to support the challenge with the cybersecurity problem. And for that, Keri is going to share with you the framework that is going to help the board.
Thank you, Nelson. So I'm sure all of you are familiar with the NIST model from the National Institute of Standards and Technology. And that's the model that we used when we thought about how to frame the questions that your board members need to discuss cybersecurity. Because, of course, boards have fiduciary and oversight responsibility for all the risks in the company. And, of course, cybersecurity is one of the biggest risks that our companies face today. So I'm going to use this model to frame the 7 questions that we talked about in our research. So the first question is around the next slide. Yeah, next slide, please. Yeah. The first question is around the most important assets that we need to protect. It'd be awesome if we could protect every asset with 100% protection. But we all know in this room that we have to make difficult choices. And our boards need to understand how we've made those choices and how we're protecting the assets in our organization. So what are our crown jewels? What are the most important assets? Question number 2 is about the layers of protection. Our board members need to understand that we have multiple layers of protection. As Nelson said in an earlier slide, our prevailing approach is defense in depth, and that means multiple layers of protection. But our board members may not understand that. They may think it's one investment and we're done. But it's not. It's multiple layers of protection, and it's constant upgrading of those layers of protection. Question number 3 is around how do we know if we've been breached? You know, many organizations, malware gets installed in our systems, and it's months, maybe years before it actually does damage to our systems. So our board members need to understand that we have a method to detect if we've been breached or not. They need to understand how we're going to know if we've actually experienced an attack. Question number 4 is around the responsibilities for understanding the response plan. So board members need to know that we have a response plan. They may not understand that responding and resilience is even more important than just the protections that we've put in place. The prevailing way to think about resilience today is not so much how much are we going to make sure that the bad guys are kept out of our system, but more about the fact that we can recover and respond quickly. Because if we assume, as Nelson said at the beginning, that everybody is going to either be attacked or they don't know yet they've been attacked, then of course it's important that we can recover and respond and get back to operations as quickly as possible. So the board members need to understand our response plan. And they also need to understand in question 5 what their role is. You don't want a board member to find out that there was a breach in your company on the news or on a web feed. You want them to have a plan in place so they know what their role is and how they're going to be alerted to what's going on and if there's been a cyber attack to the company. And that leads directly to question number 6 about business recovery plans. We want to make sure the board members understand that we have recovery plans and that we're going to get back in operation as quickly as possible. And then finally, question number 7 is around the investments. You know, board members have fiduciary responsibility. They need to make sure that money is spent appropriately in a company. And we all know that you can spend and spend and spend in cybersecurity, and there's still opportunity to spend more. So board members need to understand what's our investment strategy for cybersecurity, and how do we know what our security level is based on the investment that they've made. So they need to understand the financial side of investing in cybersecurity. So you can see here 7 questions that you could put together for your board, or if you're a board member, you can ask your cybersecurity people to really understand at the leadership level what the cybersecurity strategy is. And all of these questions are covered in our article, which Nelson's going to give you the QR code right now.
And I just would like to add something that you can use this model and those questions in 2 ways. Not just the way to protect your company, but also to see how you can adapt, for example, your products or services that you provided to our customers and use security as a competitive advantage. Let's see here some examples that we can find in our market. For example, a specific bank that created a new functionality that the name is Safe Place. Safe Place is a good way that you can have your bank app that if you leave your home, your investment is going to disappear. If you are kidnapping or if you have any problem outside your home that is your safe place, the criminals is not going to access the information regarding your investment or more detail about your current account. You don't need to have 2 cell phones, just one to make the online transactions that you keep at home and the other to walk through the Faria Lima Avenue, for example. So in this way, you can use this method because board think about strategy. In cybersecurity, as a strategy point, you can help them to achieve the mission of the company and creating a sustainable and a more maturity way to protect the company, be a competitive advantage, and help your customers. And here, we have our paper, so it's free, it's online. You can access that with this QR code, and we would love to receive some questions and feedbacks because this is an ongoing process. This is the first step. I think that this is a awareness problem and a culture problem that I'd like to ask Keri just to discover a little bit about the culture problem regarding the companies and how to deal with that.
So thank you, Nelson. One of the areas that we cover in this paper and that we've talked about in our CAMS research is how do we get our organizations aligned with our cybersecurity goals. You know, we want everybody in our organization to do secure behaviors. We want them to do things like report an email or phishing email. We want them to not click on different links that might be bad. We don't want them to respond to an email asking for money if that email isn't actually from somebody in the organization. And we see many different kinds of solicitations and weird approaches that the bad guys are trying to get into our companies with. So one of the projects that preceded this research on the board is how do we encourage the right kind of cyber behaviors. And what we noticed in our research is most organizations do that by training, by putting a training program in place and telling people in our organizations what to do. But training doesn't change values, attitudes, and beliefs. And what we really want to put in place is a culture where we help people understand that it's important for them to be cyber secure. And that's really where it comes back to the board members also. The board members often think that they're external to the company and it's not their role to participate in building the culture of the organization. But actually, our board members also have fiduciary and oversight responsibility to make sure that the people in the organization are motivated appropriately. And so when you look through our article and when you look at these 7 questions, it's really important to help your board members understand that their role in building cybersecurity is just as important, because things that they say and things that they focus on trickle down in the organization to the executive team and then to the managers in the company. So let me give you an example on one board. I actually sit on a board. I practice what we preach in this article here. And I notice that every time my CISO reports to our board, she reports technology details, how many people failed a phishing exercise, or how many endpoints we have and the latest multi-factor authentication software that we're using. But the truth is my board members, my colleagues don't understand any of that. They shake their head, but they don't really focus. They don't understand the technology behind cybersecurity like we do in this room. Instead, what they need to understand are resilience. What's going to happen if we're attacked? How are we going to respond? What do I need to do? What's my role? And really, so the challenge for us in the room here is to provide our boards with information so that they can be participating in the discussions of our cybersecurity plans and give us confidence that we've investigated everything that's necessary and that we can now help build this culture of cybersecurity so everyone in the organization knows how to contribute and be secure.
Oh, good. And I think that we are open here for questions. And just regarding the MIT CAMS, follow this website, cams.mit.edu, because there you are going to find a lot of research with a lot of papers, the ongoing projects, and some opportunities also that hiding research around the world. And it's good to see that MIT is going to support to have a global vision regarding the cybersecurity challenges. That's all. Thank you.
Let me just add that if you're interested in having your board members learn some of these concepts, we have an executive program that might be of interest to them. If you're interested in diving into some of the research that we're doing at MIT, we'd be glad to have you access our website. There's a number of articles and papers that are available for the public, and they're all in English, but hopefully the concepts will be useful to you. Everything we do, our goal is to be actionable and to provide managers with new ways to think about how to keep your companies more secure. So thank you very much for including us today.
Thank you.
Bom, pessoal, vamos abrir agora então aqui, né, abrir o Q&A. Quem quiser fazer uma pergunta, por favor, levanta a mão aí que o pessoal vai levar o microfone para você da produção. Já tem um aqui, né? Quem pode, por favor, levar? A primeira pergunta. A pergunta, você faz a tradução? Então.
Bom dia, Renato, da Clínica Vilas Boas, em Brasília.
Yeah.
Parabéns pelo conteúdo. A pergunta é como encorajar os colaboradores das empresas a se preocuparem com a segurança da informação, sem que isso seja de uma forma impositiva ou punitiva. Ou seja, que eles tenham consciência de que é importante essa preocupação com a segurança.
Obrigado pela pergunta. How can we encourage the employees to take care about security? And how can we apply a method that is not brute force way, but how can we our awareness and establish a cultural problem that can help them to deal with security protection during the day.
I'm so glad you asked that question. Cybersecurity culture is my favorite topic to talk about. So in our organization, we've studied many companies and how they encourage their employees to be more secure. So as I mentioned a few moments ago, most organizations think that you encourage employees by training them. However, I'm sure you've noticed, training's not enough. So what we've noticed in our organization is you want to find ways to change the values, attitudes, and beliefs. And one way we do that, we've seen a number of companies do a number of things, but one way is executives talk about cybersecurity. In one company we studied, the CEO, the top executive of the company, starts his all-hands meeting with a cybersecurity moment. So here's the CEO, who's not the cybersecurity leader, telling the organization that cybersecurity is important. And when the senior executives who are not your technology executives take the time to talk about cybersecurity, it makes an impact on everyone in the organization. People start to think, oh, I should have that attitude, I should have that belief, because my executives have that belief. So that's one thing you can do. You can start an all-hands meeting with a cybersecurity story. Many times the story could be, did you see this email? Did you see this headline about this company who was breached? Uber was recently breached. You can use that story in your organizations to drive people thinking about cybersecurity. Another example to change attitudes is rewarding people. So in another company that we studied, a financial services company in the United States that has employees all over the world, they created a program for employees that if you actually do something, a behavior they like, they reward you with a badge that you can put on your email. So they're called data defenders. And people send their email out with little logos on it that say that they're a data defender. And people love that. They love to be able to say they're a data defender, and they feel good about the fact that they've been rewarded. A third company that we looked at makes a point of making heroes out of people who do the right behaviors. So somebody who reports something, somebody who helps a neighbor understand that something might be a cybersecurity risk, they make heroes out of them. They reward them. They call them out in their organizations, and they share that these people are cybersecurity heroes. So there are many ways to motivate employees to do the right behavior. And when you motivate them, rather than train them, they start to develop the attitude that this is something they want to do. So that's just a few examples. I've got many more if you'd like to hear more later.
Yes, and let's add something that in theory, you know everything, but nothing works. And in the practice, everything works, and you don't know about that. I believe that you should apply some behaviors as example from the board that, for example, if you have a board member that would like to access the confidential information, why not to have the multi-factor authentication? Why not follow the correct policies that you have inside the company and show that as an example, as you do with your kid? If you would like to teach a kid, it's not just telling them, it's just about behavior. How do you act during the day? How to use the best approach as example and avoid exception. So when you start to avoid exception from the board, from the CEO, that is a great example that everybody should follow. So we can also use those questions that we have here as a great approach to discuss with some departments and areas in our company, because just try to start thinking about security. If it's their responsibility, ask them those questions and see the answer and involve them to help you to protect the company. Thank you for your question.
Thank you.
Vamos para mais uma pergunta, por favor.
My name is Sandra from Allianz Park. Thank you, Dr. Keri. I'd just like to know how, if you can share some experience where the board was so good from the security side. Like you want to improve to improve your security, but the board wasn't disfavorable to this place.
So are you asking a question about the board was not allowing you to have the resources, or the board was not knowledgeable?
Knowledgeable.
Okay, so thank you for asking that, Sandra. So many boards are not knowledgeable, and one reason we wrote this article is to help boards understand how they can be knowledgeable. Often the concern is they're afraid that when they ask the question, they're going to get an answer that they don't understand. Nobody wants to be embarrassed. So boards speak the language of risk and reputation and resilience. So if you address your board with the language of risk, reputation, and resilience, you're more likely to get your board involved. You're more likely to have the board respond with interest, because that's what they're worried about. If you address your board with phishing exercises and multi-factor authentication and firewalls, they're not really sure what their role is going to be. So the boards that we've studied, I think the number was something like 60% have been addressed by their CISO maybe once a year, because they just they know they have this responsibility, but they don't really know what to do with the information that they get. So our advice is to take something like this article, maybe share this article with your board members so that they now have a framework for thinking about how to ask you the right questions, and then that gives you the opportunity to respond in the language that they'll understand. Thank you for asking that.
Opa, obrigado. Mais alguém tem perguntas, pessoal? Mais alguma pergunta? Então tá, gostaria de agradecer então, obrigado pela presença, thank you, Keri. Agradecer então, salve de palmas para os nossos palestrantes, por favor.
Thank you.
Thank you. Obrigada.